Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The first thing Mara Vance noticed was the sound of the zipper. Not loud. Not rushed. Slow, like whoever pulled it wanted her to hear every tooth separating. Her back was pressed against the cold side of a rusted cargo truck, the metal biting through her thin jacket. Gravel dug into her palms as she tried to push away, but there was nowhere to go. The alley behind the freight depot smelled like oil and wet dust, the kind that clung to your skin and stayed there. A man's breath brushed her ear, sour with cheap beer. "Stay quiet SL*T, he whispered, the word sharp, practiced. Like he'd used it before. Mara's mind split in two. One part screamed. The other went silent, counting breaths, counting seconds, the way she'd learned years ago when panic could get you killed. Her heart slammed so hard she thought it might give her away. She tasted metal. Fear had a flavor. She'd learned that too. The second man laughed behind her. A low, careless sound. Boots shifted on gravel. Someone's hand fumbled at her waistband, clumsy and impatient. Her fingers curled into fists, nails biting skin. She thought of her sister's face. Of promises she hadn't kept. Of how small the night suddenly felt. Then everything changed. A third sound cut through the alley, not loud, not dramatic. Just footsteps. Come. Even. Like someone walking into a room they already owned. Step away from her. The voice didn't shout. It didn't beg. It didn't shake. It carried weight. The hand at her waist froze. The zipper stopped halfway. For a single, fragile second, the alley held its breath. One of the men turned. "You lost, buddy?" he sneered, trying to sound bigger than he was. Mara couldn't see the newcomer's face, but she felt the shift in the air. Pressure. The kind that came before a storm. Before violence. The stranger stood under the yellow spill of a broken streetlight, shoulders squared, posture loose in a way that made no sense unless you knew what it meant. "I said," the man repeated, stepping closer, "step away from her." The second man scoffed and moved first. That was his mistake. What happened next was fast. Brutally fast. There was a sharp crack, bone on bone, and a sound that knocked the breath from Mara's lungs even though it wasn't her being hit. A scream tore through the alley, high and animal, followed by a body folding in on itself like wet cardboard. The first man didn't even have time to react. The stranger moved like he'd done this 1,000 times. No wasted motion. No anger. Just precision. A knee drove upward. Another scream. Both men dropped, hands clutching, faces draining of color as they collapsed into the dirt. Silence rushed back in, thick and stunned. Mara slid down the truck, legs shaking so hard she couldn't stand. Her breath came in short, broken pulls. The stranger turned toward her then, finally close enough for her to see him. Late 30s. Close-cropped hair. Eyes steady. Assessing. He didn't look like a hero. He looked tired. Controlled. Dangerous in a quiet way. "You're safe now," he said, already shrugging off his jacket and holding it out without stepping closer. "Put this on." Her hands trembled as she took it. The fabric was warm. Solid. Real. Sirens wailed somewhere far off. The man glanced toward the sound, jaw tightening. "Can you stand?" he asked. Mara nodded, though she wasn't sure. As he turned slightly, checking the alley's mouth, she noticed something stitched into the inside of his sleeve. Faded letters. Almost hidden. Udatis Navy. Her eyes widened. And before she could say a word, before she could even thank him, he murmured something that chilled her more than the cold metal ever had. They weren't alone. The footsteps returned. Not his this time. And the night wasn't finished yet. The footsteps faded before they reached the alley, swallowed by distance or second thoughts. Whoever had been coming decided not to finish the walk. The man watched the darkness for a long moment, body angled like a door half closed, ready to slam shut. Only when the sirens grew louder did he turn back to Mara. "Name?" he asked, quick and quiet. "Mara," she said. Her voice sounded borrowed, like it belonged to someone else. "I'm Rook," he replied, not offering more. He never did. Some names were tools. Some were armor. Police lights flashed at the far end of the depot. Rook guided Mara away from the alley, never touching her unless she stumbled, then only enough to keep her upright. His awareness stayed wide. Windows, rooftops, reflections and broken glass. When officers finally reached them, Rook stepped back, hands visible, eyes calm. He answered questions with the minimum needed and nothing extra. By the time an ambulance arrived, he was already fading into the edges of the scene. Mara watched him go, wrapped in his jacket, heart pounding with unfinished fear. She didn't know it yet, but that night hadn't started in the alley. It had started years earlier. 3 years before, Mara Vance had learned how quiet the world could get when you were no longer useful. Her hometown of Red Quarry sat between desert and nothing, a place built on jobs that dried up and promises that never stuck. Her father died early. Her mother worked herself into a narrow grave of exhaustion. Mara left as soon as she could, carrying a scholarship and a stubborn belief that effort mattered. She studied logistics, planning, the invisible backbone of movement. She was good at it, too good for someone who didn't know how to play favorites. When the company downsized, her name landed on the list anyway. Performance didn't matter. Connections did. Bills piled up. Pride burned away. Survival took its place. That was how she ended up working nights at a freight depot in San Eloro Harbor, tracking containers, chasing overtime, walking alone past places that smelled like oil and old mistakes. She learned to keep her head down. Learned which corners to avoid. Learned how to disappear. She didn't learn fast enough. Rook, on the other hand, had learned early, and painfully, what it meant to notice everything. Before he was Rook, before the jacket and the calm, he was Ethan Crow, born to a fishing town that ate men alive if they stayed too long. He joined the Navy at 18, chasing structure the way some people chased forgiveness. He found both in the teams, where chaos had rules and silence could save lives. He earned the nickname Rook, after walking through a compound under fire without returning a single shot until the last second, then ending the fight in under 10. Calm under pressure. Always watching. Always waiting. When his last deployment ended, there was no parade. Just a handshake, a flight home, and a body that didn't know how to sleep without noise. He drifted. Security work. Short contracts. Ports and warehouses. Places where trouble gathered like rust. The night Mara was attacked, Rook wasn't supposed to be there. His shift had ended early. He stayed anyway, a habit he couldn't break. Something felt off. The sound too sharp. A laugh where there shouldn't have been one. Instinct filled the gap before thought. Back in her small apartment, Mara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the jacket folded in her lap. She hadn't washed it. Didn't want to. It smelled like cold air and something steady. The police report lay unfinished on the table. Words felt heavy. Incomplete. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. You okay? She stared at the screen, surprised by how quickly her eyes filled. I'm now, she typed back. Pause. Then be careful. This isn't over, asterisk asterisk. She didn't know how he knew. She only knew he was right. Outside, the harbor lights flickered. Somewhere, men who had dropped in the dirt were waking up with pain and anger, and questions. And in the quiet space between messages, two lives that had been running from different ghosts began moving toward the same fight. Mara didn't sleep. Every time her eyes closed, she heard the zipper again. Slow. Deliberate. Like a threat stretched out just to hurt more. She lay on her side with Rook's jacket pulled tight around her shoulders, listening to the harbor groan outside her window, metal shifting, cranes whining, distant horns calling to nothing. Morning crept in pale and weak, painting the walls a tired gray. She showered with the bathroom light off, scrubbing until her skin burned. The mirror stayed fogged. She didn't want to see herself yet. At work, people noticed. They always did. A bruise blooming along her wrist. The way she flinched when a forklift backfired. Her supervisor, Calder Holt, gave her a long look that pretended to be concern. You should take a few days, he said, already turning away. Time off meant lost pay. Lost pay meant choices she didn't have. I'm fine, she replied, because that word had become a habit. Across the depot, two men stood near a container marked for overseas shipping. They weren't dock workers. Their boots were too clean. Their eyes didn't drift, they locked. One of them glanced at Mara, then murmured something low. The other smiled without humor. She felt it then. That crawling sense. Being seen. Rook felt it too. He watched from the second-floor catwalk, pretending to check security logs while his attention mapped the room. He recognized the posture immediately. Predators don't rush when they think time is on their side. They wait. They confirm. They close circles. His phone vibrated once in his pocket. A message from a contact who owed him a favor. 2 hospital admits last night. Severe groin trauma. Victims refusing to talk. Word is they work for Rivas. Asterisk asterisk. Rivas. The name settled heavy in his chest. Luis Rivas ran freight theft along the harbor, using dock workers and false manifests to move whatever paid best. Drugs. Weapons. People, sometimes. Rook had crossed paths with his operation before, enough to know that Rivas didn't forgive embarrassment. He erased it. Rook looked down at Mara again. The men near the container were gone now, melted back into the flow. A warning. A measurement. That night, Mara didn't go straight home. She doubled back. Changed buses. Watched reflections in windows. Still, she felt footsteps echo hers 2 blocks from her building. Her pulse spiked. She turned suddenly, heart in her throat. Empty sidewalk. She exhaled shakily and stepped into her apartment hallway, and froze. Her door was ajar. Nothing was stolen. That was the worst part. Drawers opened but untouched. Photos moved. Her sister's picture turned face down on the table. On her bedroom wall, written in thick black marker, were 3 words. Stay quiet next time. Mara slid to the floor, the sound tearing out of her before she could stop it. Fear collapsed into something colder. More focused. Someone wanted her silent. Someone wanted control. She didn't call the police. She texted Rook. They were here. He was at her door in 12 minutes. Rook moved through the apartment without a word, checking locks, windows, vents. His jaw tightened at the writing on the wall. He handed her a bottle of water, waited until her shaking eased enough for her to drink. This is about leverage, he said finally. They think fear will do the job. What job? She asked, voice thin. He met her eyes. You saw something. Or you're connected to someone they don't want noticed. Mara swallowed. I just moved containers. Rook's gaze shifted to her work badge on the table. The barcode. The access level. His mind connected threats. They don't need you strong, he said quietly. They just need you compliant. Outside, an engine idled too long. Rook's phone buzzed again. Another message. A photo this time, grainy, zoomed from a distance. Mara entering the depot that morning. They're watching. Rook exhaled slowly. He'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. He'd hoped to stay in the shadows to keep his distance. But some lines, once crossed, couldn't be stepped back over. He looked at Mara, really looked. Fear was still there, but beneath it, something else had surfaced. Anger. Resolve. A refusal to disappear. Pack a bag, he said. Just essentials. Why? Because, Rook replied, already moving to the window, scanning the street below. If they want silence, we're about to make a lot of noise. And somewhere in the harbor's maze of steel and secrets, Luis Rivas started asking the wrong questions, about the wrong woman, and a Navy SEAL who didn't walk away from unfinished fights. They left the apartment just after midnight. Mara carried a small backpack, light enough to run with if she had to. Rook moved ahead of her, checking corners, listening more than looking. The city felt different at night when you knew someone was hunting you. Every shadow had weight, every parked car felt occupied even when it wasn't. They drove north, away from the harbor lights, into a stretch of low industrial buildings and storage yards that smelled of dust and old rain. Rook parked behind a shuttered mechanic's shop and killed the engine. The silence pressed in. Why here? Mara asked. Because it's quiet, he said. And because no one comes here unless they mean to. Inside the shop, a single bulb flickered to life. The space was clean in a way that meant temporary. Fold-out cots. A metal table. A map pinned to plywood, marked with circles and arrows. Rook's world laid bare, not permanent, not soft, but prepared. You live like this? Mara asked, trying not to sound small. I stay like this, Rook replied. Living comes later. He showed her how to lock the door from the inside. How to keep her phone on silent but visible. Where to stand if someone forced entry. He didn't touch her unless he had to. He didn't rush. Control, he knew, was a language fear understood. Tell me everything, he said finally. From work. From the last month. Mara sat, hands wrapped around a mug he'd filled with instant coffee. She talked about late-night manifest changes. Containers rerouted without notice. A supervisor who told her not to ask questions. A shipment flagged once, then cleared by someone above Calder-Holt's pay grade. Rook listened. Didn't interrupt. When she finished, he nodded once. You weren't chosen by chance, he said. You were chosen because you're careful. And because you didn't think you had power. Mara bristled. I don't. Rook met her gaze. You do now. He explained Rivas's operation in pieces, letting the shape form naturally. How stolen freight moved through legitimate channels. How silence was enforced. How women like Mara were easier to threaten, cheaper in their eyes. They think shame will keep you quiet, he said. They're wrong. Mara swallowed. What if they hurt my sister? Rook didn't soften the truth. That's why we move first. He handed her a burner phone. You don't answer unknown numbers. You don't go anywhere alone. And tomorrow you go back to work. Her eyes widened. That's insane. It's bait, he said simply. And it's the only way to see who pulls the line. Morning came hard and bright. At the depot, tension hung thick. Calder Holt avoided her eyes. A man she didn't recognize stood too close while she scanned containers, his smile flat. At lunch, her burner buzzed. Locker 17. Now, asterisk. Mara's chest tightened. She glanced up. Rook stood across the floor, pretending to argue with a driver. His head dipped once. Go. Locker 17 was at the far end, near the cold storage units. The air there tasted like metal. She opened the door. Inside sat a tablet. On the screen, a paused video. Her apartment hallway. The time stamp from last night. A message appeared beneath it. You keep quiet. Or next time no one comes. Asterisk. Mara's hands shook, but she didn't drop the tablet. She remembered the zipper, the boots, and the sound of bone breaking when the balance shifted. She hit play. The video jumped to another angle. A camera she didn't recognize. The alley. The men. Rook stepping into frame. Clear. Unmistakable. The locker slammed shut behind her. A voice spoke from the other side, low and pleased. See? Everyone has something to lose. Mara closed her eyes and smiled. Because Rook had told her this might happen. Because the tablet wasn't theirs anymore. And because the man on the other side of the door didn't know that every second he stood there, a trap was tightening. From the catwalk above, Rook watched Calder Holt answer a phone he didn't know was tapped. Rook pressed a button on his comm and whispered, "They took the bait." Somewhere else in the city, Luis Rivas made a decision he would never undo. And the line between hunter and hunted began to blur. The locker door opened again, slow this time. The man outside didn't grab Mara. That was deliberate. Control wasn't always about force. Sometimes it was about letting fear do the work for you. He stepped aside and motioned with his chin. Mid-30s. Clean shave. Harbor badge clipped backward like he didn't care who saw it. Walk, he said. Mara did. Each step felt measured, rehearsed. Her heart hammered, but her face stayed still. Rook had drilled this into her just hours earlier. Asterisk panic is loud. Calm makes mistakes for other people's star. As they moved past stacked containers, the depot noise swallowed their conversation. Forklifts beeped. Steel rang. Ordinary sounds hiding a very quiet war. They stopped beside a refrigerated unit humming like a giant animal breathing. You're going to forget what you saw, the man said. You're going to approve the next manifest without reading it. And you're going to keep showing up like nothing happened. And if I don't? Mara asked. He smiled. You already know. Behind them, unseen, a second man watched. And above them, on the catwalk, Rook tracked both with a stillness that looked like boredom. His earpiece crackled once, confirmation tones only. Cameras live. Audio clean. Every word mattered now. Mara nodded just enough. I understand. The man relaxed. That was the crack. Rook moved. He didn't run. He flowed. Dropped from the catwalk into shadow, boots hitting concrete without a sound. His hand clamped the second man's mouth before the thought of surprise finished forming. A twist. A soft, final grunt. The body lowered, not dropped. Rook stepped past him like an inconvenience handled. The first man turned too late. Rook didn't punch him. He kicked, precise, upward, merciless. The sound was wet and final. The man folded, face draining of color as pain erased arrogance. Rook caught him by the collar before he hit the ground, holding him upright just long enough for Mara to see it clearly. Tell Rivas, Rook said, voice level, close to the man's ear, this ends now. He let go. Sirens wailed in the distance, closer than before. Plant. Time. Rook was gone before anyone thought to look up. That night, Luis Rivas smashed a glass against his office wall. The tablet lay cracked on his desk, paused on footage he'd watched too many times. The alley. The intervention. The kicks that dropped his men like sacks of grain. He hated the calm in the rescuers' movements. Professionals didn't scare him. They annoyed him. Find him, Rivas snapped. Find her. Burn whatever you have to. His lieutenant hesitated. The cops are sniffing around the depot. And there's chatter. Someone's leaking. Rivas smiled thinly. Then we flushed them out. Mara stayed in the shop that night, pacing between the cots. Rook returned near dawn, blood on his knuckles that wasn't his. He washed his hands at the sink, slow and methodical. They won't stop, Mara said. No, Rook agreed. But they'll rush now. He showed her the recordings. Calder Holt's voice. Dates. Times. Names. Proof stitched together with patience and pressure. Enough to sink an operation, if it reached the right hands. And if it doesn't? She asked. Rook met her eyes. Then we finish it another way. She studied him, the way he moved through the space like it was temporary by design. Why help me? He thought of other nights. Other alleys. Other people who hadn't had a voice left by the time he arrived. Because silence is their favorite weapon, he said. And I'm tired of letting them use it. The next day, a black SUV followed Mara from the depot. She didn't panic. She led it, slowly, into a dead-end road by the old breakwater, where waves slapped concrete like applause. The SUV stopped behind her. 2 doors opened. Then a third sound cut through the wind. A helicopter. Spotlights flared. Engines roared. Federal markings glinted white against blue. The SUV's doors froze mid-swing. Rook stepped into view from behind a stack of pylons, phone raised, camera rolling. Mara turned, heart pounding, not with fear this time but with something sharp and bright. Above them, a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. This is a joint task force. Step away from the vehicle. Hands where we can see them. The men hesitated. That was their last mistake. As cuffs snapped shut and agents moved in, Mara felt something inside her unlock. The weight shifted. Not gone but lighter. Rook approached, close enough now for her to see the lines around his eyes. It's not over, he said. But it's breaking. Mara nodded. So am I. Behind them waves crashed. Ahead of them lights flashed. And somewhere Luis Rivas realized too late that pressure points worked both ways. The arrests made the news by morning. Not names. Not details. Just a headline buried beneath politics and weather. Harbor Task Force detains multiple suspects in ongoing smuggling probe. To most people it meant nothing. To Mara it felt like the ground shifting under her feet. She watched the broadcast from the shop, arms wrapped around herself. Rook stood near the open door, phone pressed to his ear, listening more than speaking. Every few seconds his eyes flicked to the road outside. Even victories had blind spots. They'll say it's isolated, Mara said. A few bad actors. Rook ended the call and nodded. They always do. He didn't tell her that Rivas hadn't been among the arrested. That the net, wide as it was, still had holes. He waited until she asked. Where is he? She said. Not in custody, Rook replied. Which means he's scared, or planning. That night the power went out. The bulb over the shop door died with a soft pop. Darkness rushed in, thick and sudden. Mara's breath caught. Rook's hand came up, palm open, *wait star. He moved without sound, pulling a flashlight from his pocket, angling the beam low. A vehicle idled outside. Not close. Watching distance. Mara's burner buzzed once in her hand. You think lights make you visible. They don't. People do. ***. Her throat tightened. Rook? I see it, he said quietly. The engine revved. Tires crunched gravel, then faded. A message delivered. Promise maybe. Rook exhaled slowly. We accelerate. The next day, Mara returned to the depot with a wire tucked into her collar and a camera disguised as a badge clip. She felt exposed, every step echoing louder than it should. Calder Holt was gone. Administrative leave, rumor said, but his office light was on. Inside, folders lay stacked too neatly. Someone had been there recently. She scanned manifests, letting the camera drink in signatures and reroutes. A name appeared again and again at the margins. Elias Moreau star. Not a dock worker. Not management. A ghost. Her earpiece crackled. Rook's voice calm as ever. Moreau's Rivas is cleaner. If he's here, Rivas is close. Footsteps approached. Mara closed the file and turned just as a man filled the doorway. Tall. Gray hair at the temples. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mara Vance, he said. You work very hard. She forced a nod. It's my job. He stepped inside and closed the door. Your job has put you in danger. The words were gentle. That made them worse. I can make it stop, Moreau continued. One statement. One correction. You walk away. No more fear. Mara thought of the wall in her apartment. The zipper. The boots. She met his gaze. No. The smile faded. Then you misunderstand the offer. The door burst open. Rook didn't announce himself. He never did. He crossed the room in 3 strides, hand on Moreau's wrist before the man could reach inside his coat. A twist. Metal clattered to the floor, a compact pistol skidding under a desk. Moreau went pale. You're making a mistake. Rook leaned in, voice low. You already did. Sirens cut in again, closer, louder. Agents flooded the corridor. Moreau sagged as cuffs closed. His eyes locked on Mara, burning with a promise he couldn't keep. Outside, chaos rippled. Radios barked. Doors slammed. For the first time, the depot felt honest, its secrets dragged into light. But Rook didn't relax. Rivas won't run, he said as they walked. Men like him don't. They reclaim. That night, Mara's sister called. Shaken. A car had followed her home. Stopped when neighbors came out. The line went quiet. Rook stared at the floor map, jaw tight. He's out of options. Then he'll do something loud, Mara said. Rook nodded. And personal. They drove toward the old breakwater again, wind tearing at the water, light strobing across waves. Rook checked his gear, spare mag, blade, radio. He handed Mara a small recorder. If anything happens, he said, this keeps going. She swallowed. And you? I'll be where I need to be. A flare arced up from the far end of the pier, red, hissing, impossible to ignore. Rook's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Rivas's voice slid through the line, smooth and smiling. Bring the girl, he said. Come alone. Rook ended the call. Mara's hands shook, but she didn't drop the recorder. Chapter's closing, Rook said, eyes on the fire. And the next one ends this. The wind howled. The flare burned. And somewhere between the water and the dark, silence prepared to fight back. They didn't go to the pier. That was the first decision that mattered. Rook cut the engine 2 blocks short and killed the lights. The flare's red glow smeared the clouds ahead, pulsing like a wound that refused to close. Wind carried the hiss of burning magnesium. An invitation. A lie. He wants witnesses scared away, Rook said. Open water. Limited exits. Mara nodded, gripping the recorder. Her pulse was loud in her ears, but her thoughts were sharp. Fear had burned down to something usable. So we give him something else to watch. Rook checked his watch. Then the street. Then the rooftops. Stay behind me. If I say run, you don't look back. They moved through a maze of storage sheds and stacked pylons, boots silent on grit. Rook ghosted from shadow to shadow, marking angles, counting seconds. He wasn't hunting Rivas. He was shaping him, closing options until the only path left was the one Rook chose. A van idled near the pier's far end. Doors open. Music playing too loud. Men laughed, trying to sound loose. Trying to sell confidence they didn't have. Rook slipped a small camera onto a light pole and angled it down. Another went under a bench, then a third near the van's open door. He worked fast, hands steady. The web took shape. Mara's phone buzzed. Where are you? Unknown. She typed back with fingers that didn't shake. On my way. A reply came instantly. Hurry. Rook's mouth twitched. Good. He's impatient. They reached the pier's edge. Waves slapped concrete hard enough to spray their boots. The flare burned down to a molten stub, painting faces red as Rivas stepped into view. He was smaller than Mara expected. Expensive coat. Clean shoes. A man used to rooms where everyone listened. His eyes flicked to her, then past her, searching. You brought help, Rivas said mildly. Rook stepped into the light. You asked for me. Rivas smiled. I asked for the girl. Rook moved before the smile finished forming. He didn't charge. He shifted, cutting the angle, forcing Rivas's men to adjust. One reached for a weapon. Rook kicked the bench. It slammed into the man's knee. Bone cracked. The laugh died. Another lunged. Rook pivoted, drove a heel down. Same place, same result. 2 men down, both clutching themselves, faces twisted in shock and agony. The sound carried over the water, ugly and final. Rivas backed away, eyes wide now. You think this ends me? No, Rook said. I think it ends tonight. A shot cracked. Concrete sparked. Rook rolled, came up behind the van, yanked the door shut as another round punched metal. He fired once, not to kill but to end the argument. The shooter screamed and dropped. Mara didn't freeze. She pressed record. She spoke clearly, voice carrying. Luis Rivas. You threatened me. You threatened my family. This is you trying to silence me. Rivas snarled. Shut her up. A hand grabbed Mara's arm from behind. She twisted, drove her elbow back the way Rook had shown her. The grip loosened. Rook was there in a blink, knee up, precise and brutal. The man folded, screaming, hands clamped where pain erased all bravado. Sirens howled, real ones this time. Blue lights washed the pier. Rivas ran. He didn't get far. Rook tackled him at the edge, both men skidding, water spraying as Rivas scrabbled for purchase. Rook pinned him, forearm across his chest, voice low and steady. "It's over." Rivas spat, desperate. "You can't protect her forever." Rook tightened his hold just enough to be felt. Long enough. Agents swarmed in, guns trained, cuffs snapping. Rivas sagged as the weight of it landed, cameras blinking, voices recording, the night refusing to stay quiet. Mara stood shaking, recorder still running. An agent wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Another took her statement, eyes kind, pen steady. Rook stepped back into shadow as medics worked. He watched until Rivas was gone, until the pier felt emptied of its threat. Mara found him near the pylons. "You didn't come alone," she said softly. He nodded toward the lights. "Never planned to." She looked at the water, then back at him. "Thank you." Rook held her gaze. "You did the hard part." Behind them, waves kept time. Ahead of them, engines faded. The trap had closed. And for the first time since the zipper sound, the night loosened its grip. Morning arrived like it didn't know what had happened. The harbor woke up ordinary, gulls screaming, engines coughing to life, coffee steaming in paper cups. News vans lined the street by noon, cameras hungry, reporters rehearsing serious faces. Names began to surface. Charges followed. Conspiracy, coercion, assault, trafficking. Words that carried weight because someone had finally forced them into daylight. Mara sat in a quiet interview room with a window that looked out at water. An agent slid a recorder across the table and smiled gently. "Whenever you're ready." She took a breath and began at the beginning, not the alley but the job. The manifest, the pressure, the fear that tried to shrink her. She spoke clearly, steadily. When her voice wavered, she didn't stop. She finished. When it was over, the agent nodded. That mattered. Outside, Rook leaned against a railing, jacket zipped, eyes on the horizon. He listened to the wind and tried not to count exits. Old habits didn't break clean. A phone buzzed in his hand. A familiar number. Command. "We've got him," the voice said. "Rivas is talking. He's naming names." Rook closed his eyes for a second. "Good. There's more," the voice continued. "We're offering you a seat on the task force. Temporary. Your call." Rook watched Mara step out of the building, shoulders straighter than the night before. He thought about staying. About walking away. "I'll think about it," he said and ended the call. They walked along the pier together, quiet between them, comfortable now. Mara stopped and faced him. "What happens to you?" Rook shrugged. "Same as always. I go where I'm useful." She studied him. "You don't have to disappear." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's how I help." A car slowed nearby. Mara tensed, then exhaled when it kept going. She noticed the change in herself. The fear still there, but it didn't own her anymore. She owned it. "My sister's staying with friends," she said. "Safe?" She asked about you. Rook raised an eyebrow. "What did you tell her?" "The truth," Mara said. "That you showed up when it mattered." A reporter called her name. Mara turned, then paused. "Will I see you again?" Rook met her eyes. "If you need me." She nodded once, then walked toward the waiting microphones. Her voice carried across the water, steady and sure. The cameras leaned in. The story changed shape. Rook left before the questions turned sharp. He drove until the city thinned and the road straightened. He stopped at a lookout above the water and watched the tide turn. The world felt lighter when truth surfaced. He didn't expect peace. He accepted progress. His phone buzzed again. A text this time. "I didn't stay quiet." Oh. Rook smiled. Behind the scenes, warrants rolled. Doors opened. Files spilled. The men who thought silence was cheap learned it cost more than they'd planned. And Mara, who had been chosen because she was quiet, found her voice carried farther than anyone expected. The night had taken its swing. It missed. The first shot came through Mara's window just before dawn. It shattered glass, not bone. That mattered. Rivas was in custody, but his reach hadn't gone quiet yet. Desperation had a long tail. Mara rolled off the bed as the second round punched the wall where her head had been. Plaster dust filled the air, chalky and bitter. She crawled, heart hammering, and hit the floor behind the couch. Her phone was already in her hand. One word texted. Now. Rook was 3 blocks away. He'd slept in his truck, engine cold, eyes open. The sound reached him first, the sharp crack that didn't belong to the morning. He moved before thought, tires screaming as he cut the corner. He killed the lights, coasted, and saw the muzzle flash across the street. One shooter. Bad position. Worse patience. Rook exited the truck low, using parked cars as cover. He counted the rhythm. The shooter fired again, high, wild. Fear had him now. Rook closed the distance, silent, precise. When the man tried to reload, Rook was already there. No speeches. No warnings. A kick landed exactly where it ended fights fastest. The man folded, screaming into the street. Rook disarmed him and stepped back as sirens rose. Neighbors had called this time. Cameras were everywhere now. That mattered too. Mara emerged, wrapped in a blanket, shaking but standing. She met Rook's eyes. He nodded once. It's done. At the station the shooter talked. Not because he wanted to, because the web had tightened and there was nowhere left to run. Names spilled. Orders traced back. The last thread snapped. By evening the headline changed. Rivas network dismantled. Key witness speaks. Mara watched it on a screen with her sister beside her, hands clasped. The room was full of quiet that didn't hurt. Rook stood at the door, already halfway gone. An agent approached him. Task Force's official. We could use you. Rook looked at Mara. She gave him a small, fierce smile. Go, she said. Be useful. He nodded. You changed the math, he told her. Don't forget that. Outside, the sun dipped, painting the water copper. The city kept moving, unaware of how close it had come to staying silent forever. Rook walked into the dusk with purpose again, not chasing ghosts but closing doors. And Mara stood in the light, unbroken, voice steady, knowing the worst sound she'd ever heard no longer owned her future. The harbor was calm again, almost impossibly calm, like it was holding its breath after the storm. Waves lapped gently against the pier, glinting copper in the evening sun. Mara walked alongside her sister, shoulders squared, backpack light. The scars, emotional and physical, still lingered, but they were hers now, not the shadows of others. Inside the task force office, federal agents worked quietly. Calder Holt, Elias Moreau, and the other enforcers were behind bars or under heavy surveillance. Every shipment that had been manipulated was accounted for. Systems changed. Manifest checked. Every chain tightened until no one could slip through unnoticed. Mara's testimony had been the keystone. Her voice, once threatened into silence, now commanded attention. Rook stood near the door, jacket zipped, eyes scanning the room. He didn't stay long. That wasn't his life. But before he left, he turned to Mara. You've earned this, he said. Your voice. Your future. Don't let anyone take it again. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I won't. Outside, the sun touched the horizon. Mara inhaled the salty air. Every detail of the alley, the zipper, the boots, the fear, and the breaking point of those men who thought dominance could be taken with shame, all of it was behind her. The city moved on, but so had she. And now she moved with it, unafraid, unshakable, and ready to be heard. Rook's shadow stretched long across the pier. He turned once, almost imperceptibly, a salute without words. Then he disappeared into the streets, leaving Mara with the light, the wind, and the knowledge that silence could be fought, and won. The night that began with fear and violence had ended with clarity, justice, and power. Mara's world had changed. And so had she. The zipper, the alley, the threat, they no longer had the final word. Silence had been broken.